Hello my friends, I thought I'd do an update build video to let you know kind of where I'm at on Johnny 5. Had a number of things going on here recently that I thought I'd share with you. First off, I'd like to show you the tool arm area. So I've done this tool arm area before, but I recently needed to do an upgrade on it for multiple reasons. One, I need to incorporate these covers that I've got printed, they're not painted yet, onto it, being able to mount those. And then two, I needed to move around some components due to interference and also just adding some additional parts to the bot. So yeah, so here's where we're at. Unfortunately, Johnny is not talking right now. This is his voice box right here in his brain, but we'll be back to normal very, very soon. So what we got here, and I'll put up the previous version of this on the screen. Essentially, before, the way it was arranged, I had a different power supply on here, and I had it down here. It was this guy. And the problem with this guy is there's been reports on the internet that this will over voltage. So what that means is basically I had it set up to put out 5 volts from 24 volts, and over voltage means it basically goes above the set voltage. So it would go from 5 to some other voltage, which is catastrophic to components that are not expecting that level of voltage. So I didn't want to take the chance of this $10 part doing that. And I already had this regulator here, which is a very robust fixed regulator from 24 to 6 volts. So I went ahead and installed that. And then I took that opportunity to move this over away from the Kyber because this is putting out RF. Ideally, this probably should be somewhere else entirely, but I think we'll be okay with it moved away from there. And the audio filters, which were previously down here, moved to the outside here. So what I've done is for my build, I actually have 2 sources of audio. So one is through the Kyber system, which has a number of scenes and audio files on the SD card on that. And then I've also went and installed a Bluetooth receiver here, and so I could have other phrases he could say outside of the capacity that is limited in the Kyber. So the Kyber can only do so many. I wanted to have kind of an infinite number, so I added this Bluetooth receiver to combine into the audio system. So in order to do that, everything has to be somewhat isolated because otherwise I get a lot of ground loop happening. So where stuff feeds back into the circuit and it creates a hum or a noise. So what I've done here is I basically have my inputs are these 2 filters. So the Kyber is coming into this one and then ultimately going into line 1, I believe that is. And then you have the Bluetooth receiver here going into this through this filter, this isolator, and then going into line 2. And then this is a mixer, and we got volume knobs here, of which then I can match those 2 sources up, and then a single output brings it to these 2 filters, of which then one is going to the speakers and the tracks, and the other goes to his head. So because there's an amp on the output, there's 2 different amps on the output, I needed to isolate those on the outputs as well. The challenge here is that this thing is very tight. When you go to put this cover on there, there's very little room to put that on there. And I won't put that on there just yet because it's actually powered up, as you can see right now. And then in addition to all this, I found out this little guy here, this Bluetooth receiver, is ultra sensitive to its input. It has to have exactly 5 volts. And because this is putting out 6 volts, I went and see if I can get a shot of it here. I went and I put a 7805 regulator on the output of the 6 volts to bring it to exactly 5 volts. So that is pretty much the update for this part of it. And I'll show you kind of what I was talking about the 2 different audio sources. And so when I hit one of these buttons, So
Los locos kick your ass. Los locos kick.
So there you go. That's how the Kyber system works. You have over here the rest of my sounds. So I can hit, you can kind of hear it in the background going off. Let's try.
That is awesome.
All right, so that's the tablet that's talking to this over here. So that's pretty much it for this part of it, and I'll show next kind of how the covers attach. Here is where the tool arm has been assembled together, and this is kind of what it looks like in draft form, if you will. It's not painted. It's some of it's been sanded. This hasn't been sanded, but this is kind of how it looked like once it's all assembled and then onto Johnny. So couple of things here I had to figure out. One, the cab today doesn't have any way to attach all these. Not really. So you can put the cap on it, but the cap tends to slide down too far. There's nothing to hold these sides on other than, well, there's nothing to hold this side on other than the cap, and then this side, you know, the body is connected into here, and so there's a piece here that would hold this, but it's very unstable. There's probably going to be some designs on this going forward with Input Inc., but I went ahead and jumped ahead to get mine all situated, and this is kind of what I did for mine. You take the top off, it's going to fall apart a little bit because it doesn't have, it's not on the body. But the first thing I did is I added these tabs here. So basically what I was realizing is when this slipped on, there's a little bit of an indentation here, but for the most part it would sit on there, and then it would, A, it wouldn't grab and it would just come right off, and B, it would slide further up into the cavity here. So I thought, well, kind of tried thinking of different solutions, and this was the one I came up with. So I just added these little tabs here that have little grooves, and then, you know, essentially once this is together, and it's a little hard to demonstrate here, but once it's together, you can then have these help as alignment also. You can just line these tabs up, and once you get them all lined up, and it takes a little bit to get them lined up, I'll be honest. There we go. And it goes on, and it doesn't go any further down, and it stays on. So it seems to be a pretty good solution for that. All right, so that's what I did there. And then for the rest of this, let me set it on its side here. For this side, I just used magnets. So I attached magnets here in these 3 locations. Didn't really find the need to put in one here, so I did these 3. So what I did here was I basically took a cutout of these metal pieces, and then identical print of the metal that's underneath, but much thinner. As you can see here, this is pretty thin. And I added these holders for the magnets. I put one there, one here, one here. The only reason why that one's different is because I was trying something different, and ultimately if I reprint this again, I'll just use this style. And I added the 3 there. And the biggest challenge in this area is you can see here, there's a lot of just contoured area, and some of it sticks down lower than others. So really had to figure out how to mount all this in here so it doesn't interfere with the cover going on. A lot of this ended up needing to go flat against the plastic. So that was worked out really well because this is not conductive. So I was able to put these directly down onto the plastic and not have to worry about shorting out. Some of these I was able to put standoffs on, but stuff in this area I had to go all the way flat. So that worked out spectacularly. And then underneath, what I did was I used this, which is really, really thin double-sided sticky tape, and I put in the area where the magnets were. So I think I put a strip like across here or down this way, and then I put a strip, I know, across here and a strip across here. Now these screws here are all going to help hold that down. All this stuff will help hold it down, but I went ahead and did that just as added support. And then I didn't put anything here, as you can see, but there's a bar that goes here, and then a screw goes here and a screw goes there. So this will get held down without a problem. So then this just kind of goes over like this, and it self-aligns, and it goes on. So that's how that works. And then on the other side, I did something similar, but I also and I'm going to take it out first. I also added this USB port. So I have a wire that comes from his chest for the Maestro to program it, and right now it's just hanging off the robot. And I wanted to be able to have a way to get to that so I can program him, but I didn't want to have just a loose wire. So I'll end up running that wire into this area, and then it'll plug in here, and then I'll be able to connect a USB plug into that whenever I need to program him. So I'm going to take this out. It does have a retaining nut that can go on the back side of it. So I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger so it'll go in and out. Okay, so now that that's off, basically this works similar as the other. Now this side doesn't normally need to come off because it's up against the robot, but I did find that just having this area as the support only wasn't enough. So I put a standoff here and a standoff there. Same kind of concept. So I added 2 magnet towers here, and then I did the same thing on this side. I printed identical to the metal, and then A, it's there in case I need to put electronics here, and B, it's a place to mount these. And then this will just sticks right on. Now, I didn't put anything over here. As you can see, it doesn't have a standoff there, but it's not really needed once this is on the robot because there's a big piece of plastic, cylinder piece of plastic that goes there that'll keep this aligned. Worst case later, if I find that's not enough, then I can add one here as well. But at this point, I think 2 will be plenty. So that's how the covering is going to work for the tool arm area on my Johnny 5. So the latest acquisition I have, as you've probably seen on my pages, are these covers for his shoulders. So these were made by MI Incorporated out of Round Rock, Texas. The gentleman down there was nice enough to manufacture these for Johnny and contribute it to the build. So very much appreciate that. I don't have the equipment in order to do this type of machining, and I definitely wanted to get these so I can continue on with the build, because now that I have these, and as soon as I have the upper arm, because I do need to wait for the upper arm in order to install the spring here that goes underneath these, then I can paint these along with his whole upper body tube that has not been painted. And I can paint all these at once, so that way I can make sure that they all match and so on and so forth. So the way that it goes on is right here. So basically this just slips over the assembly. Had to take this off in order to put this other one on, but you can see here it's all nice and clean. And then the way this works is, let's walk over to Johnny. The way this works is I've shown this before, but there's another assembly that goes inside here, and then this will connect up here, and then you can see here it'll, his arm will be something like that. So just kind of backing off there a little bit so you can see it. And then his upper arm will come down from there. This is a very heavy piece. It's probably 15 pounds. My gosh, it's pretty heavy. A lot of metal in this, a lot of mechanics. But what I got to debate now is do I go ahead and paint these now and paint this? Because in order to paint this, I've got to take all this off in order to paint this tube. Or do I wait? I'm very much thinking what I can do is put the spring in here, but not tension it. And then go ahead and take this off and paint it, take this apart and paint it, get all this assembled on here, ready for the arms. It's kind of where my thinking is, but that's the challenge I have with this too, because this is where the tool arm was at that I just showed earlier, and this is the piece that it couples to. As you can see here, this is unpainted, so I really need to take this off and primer it and paint it, which I think I'll do that relatively quickly. That's a pretty easy item. But then I got to paint the cover, at least the inner cover that goes on the tool arm, before I put all this back on, because I can put all that back on now, but then it's all unpainted, and then I've got to disassemble it all again. You can see here's the number of wires in here that I have to reconnect. So there's a likelihood that I'm going to go ahead and pause, and he will not be running for a little bit until I paint these items, because I don't want to have to keep assembling and reassembling. But that's pretty much the update at this point. There's a lot going on, and Johnny, he'll be back at it here pretty quickly. Thanks for following.
Come and follow me.